Alright, welcome to my tutorial on how to edit objects that we get out of the 3D scanner and edit the textures that are on them. So we're going to go up here, start by importing wavefront.obj, navigate to where you have it downloaded, open the obj file, and again it will take a little bit to load, so just wait for that. Alright, now that we have it in, go ahead and select it, and what we're going to do first is apply the texture so that we can see it and not have to worry about later. So we're going to go shader editor, do add texture, image texture, and go ahead and open where you have the JPEG stored and connect the color input to that. Go ahead and click Z and change to look dev to make sure that your texture is properly applied. Yep, it looks good. Now we're going to go back to solid mode by holding Z and clicking on solid. Alright, so now we're going to actually edit the mesh. So if you go into sculpt mode by holding tab and then clicking down on sculpt, you'll get your sculpting tools right here. Luckily, the original mesh is high enough resolution that we won't have to deal with dynamic topology, which would make it so we'd have to rebake our texture onto this. So what I'm going to do first is press S, and it'll give me a smooth brush. You can see the brushes right here. And I'm going to just smooth this out a little bit, just these areas. And then what I'm going to do is click C. That will change to a clay brush, which is going to add. By pressing F, you can change your radius size. You can also change it right here. So F and Shift F is the strength. So I want it to be fairly strong. So I'm going to use something like this. And I'm just going to kind of fill in that hole until it looks about right. So fill it in a little bit. You can go a little overboard, like just a bit above, because we're going to be using the smooth brush to bring it back down. So go ahead and smooth kind of the edges out to make sure you have a fairly nice topology here. But then you can see we have bumps over here that we clearly don't have where we just smoothed this out. So what we're going to do is add a texture to our brush. So go ahead and click C again to bring up the clay brush. We're going to go down here to texture, click new, and change where it says type to distorted noise. So what this will do is give us this kind of distorted texture. So go ahead and scale your brush up a little bit and increase the strength, and you can see it is now adding a little bit of texture. So it may be kind of overkill looking because there's a lot of it and it's pretty repetitive. So what we can do is go to our smooth brush again, scale it up, and go ahead and smooth it down a little bit. You want to decrease the strength to about 0.2 is pretty good, and just lightly brush over the bumps. And so what that does is it gives you some texture variation to match this general area without looking flat like it was before. So now go ahead and switch back to object mode by holding tab, going to object mode, and now our mesh is fixed, but now we have to fix the texture, because if we go into look dev, you can see there's still like this spot where the bun was cut out, but there's no mesh there anymore. There's no depth to it, so it just looks weird. So what we're going to do is now switch to solid again and tab into texture paint. So what texture paint will do is allow us to clone the texture around it and paint over it. So I'm going to go over here really quickly and go to image editor, and I'm going to click on here and click on burger because that'll bring up the image we already have stored in this Blender file since we opened it to apply to our mesh. So now what we can do is we can change our brush type by clicking up here on clone. So the clone will allow us to clone the surrounding area. So you right click to set your origin. It doesn't show it for some reason. I think that's still a 2.8 glitch, but that's how you set your origin, and then you just paint across. So if you want, you can get a little bit from down here and paint it and just kind of mess around with the colors. But that's pretty good, and now our hamburger bun no longer has a giant dent out of it. So we can go back into object mode, and now what you want to do is, since we painted over that, you want to save this texture. So you're going to come over here into this window and click image, save, or save as, and rename it. You're going to say burger new JPEG and save it. And now what we can do is we can finish up by redoing our modifiers like we did in the last tutorial. So we're going to do decimate 0.25. Once that's done, go ahead and click apply. And now we can export it. So we're going to export wavefront.obj, and we're going to name it burger hole. And we can save that. And now we have a reduced topology mesh without a giant chunk out of it. So that's how this works. So hopefully this was helpful.